do we know that we know? And how do we know that we have the proper authority? Has been the subject of the stories of the last days. And if the stories are any indication, before we can know that we know and know that we have the proper authority, there are several factors that have to be applied. And if the stories are any indication, we've already discovered that one of those factors is that we have to be tested. And the second is that it has to be the right time. But there is a third that has yet to be defined. So let's see if this old story will allow us to be able to recognize what this third factor is. It's a story about a man called Mallick Dinar. Now, Mallick Dinar was a seeker for many, many years of his life, and he had come to the recognition of the truth that the hidden teacher was within each of us. But nevertheless, Mallick Dinar was inspired to go on a pilgrimage to find this hidden teacher. Some urge within him, driving him to go out into the world. So, taking a few dates and a little flask of water, he set out on the road. And he hadn't gone very far when he met an old and ancient dervish dressed in his patchwork cloak, and they greeted one another amiably. And the old dervish asked Mallick Dinar, "Where are you going?" And Mallick Dinar replied that he was on a quest to find the hidden teacher. And the old dervish wisely said, "Well, it is believed that the hidden teacher is within each of us. But since you're traveling, I will travel with you." So they set out along the road, and as the day passed, they came to rest under a great, great tree. And as they were sitting there, the old dervish said, "I hear a buzzing sound that is filled with distress. I wonder what it could be. Perhaps we should look into the trunk of this tree to find out what it is." But Mallick Dinar said, No, we're in a hurry. I have to find the hidden teacher." So he hastened to call the old dervish to be on the road, which they did. And the day passed, and evening came, and they settled down for the night. But then the old dervish said, perhaps it was that in the trunk of the tree, the buzzing sound could have been bees who were in some distress and needed to be released. Perhaps we can go back and see. So they waited until the morning time and went back to the great tree. But when they arrived there was a group of men who were dancing around the tree in great glee and joy. "We're rich, we're rich, we're rich. We looked into the trunk of this tree and released the bees that were filled with honeycombs. We're going to be rich. We're no longer going to be poor." Then they looked at the old dervish and said, "Was it you who told us about this buzz?" But that was brushed off, and Mallick Dinar was a little bit angry. If only we'd known about this, we could be rich ourselves. But anyway, they went off on their quest again on the road, and they travelled a very great distance, and of course they again had to come to rest for the night, and they lay down with what would be the same as our swags to settle for the night. And the old dervish said, "I hear a sound under the earth. It sounds like ants who are building an underground nest but have found something blocking their way. Perhaps we can dig and find out to release them." The dervish said, No, that's not what we're on about. We're here to find the hidden teacher. No, forget about that. So they settled down for the night, and they hadn't gone very far when Mallick Dinar was feeling in his pouch, and he said, "I think I left my knife behind." So they had to backtrack to where they'd rested for the night. And there again, they found a group of men who dug under the ground and found that what had been impeding the ants was not rocks and stones, but gold. So they were delighted. And they also looked at the old dervish and said, "You look very much like the old man who came and told us to dig here." But then that was brushed off. But of course, Mallick Dinar was quite angry also. If only I'd known about these things, we could be rich, rich, rich. But so they went out on the road again, but not long they came to a river that had to be crossed, and it was late in the day. And as they were standing, waiting for the ferry boat to come, which came from the other side of the river, the old dervish said, "Oh, I see a fish here that's in very great distress, trying to gasp for air out of the river. It seems it's trying to get onto the bank to find some kind of herb." But the ferry boat was arriving. Mallick Dinar said, No, and he hurried the dervish onto the ferry boat. But the old dervish said, "You know that all things are connected." But Mallick Dinar didn't take any credence of what the old dervish seemed to be mumbling, and they crossed in the ferry to the other side. Now it was fortunate, because on the other side of the river someone had built a little hut which was there to have people find shelter when it was needed. So they settled down for the night. But the very next morning, as they were having tea, the ferry boat came and bowed in front of the old dervish, who gave him a wave of blessing and quietly said to him, "You deserve it," because the ferryman said, "Well, you were my last passengers for the night, and I wasn't going to take anyone else, but when I saw that you were several pilgrims, I decided to take you. And when I returned to the shore, I saw a fish that had jumped out of the water, that was in great distress, trying to find some herbs. And so I assisted the fish, and it regurgitated a stone, a great diamond, and now I am rich. I don't have to be a ferry boat man anymore." Now, Mallick Dinar was very, very angry at the old dervish, and he said to him, "By some power of perception that you have, you knew all along about these things. And if you only indicated them to me, we would be rich by now." But then, suddenly, a very great wave of recognition and understanding washed over Mallick Dinar. And even though he heard the words that the dervish spoke to him, he already knew what it was. As the dervish said, "Now you will understand what it is that is needed." So from this story, what is it that arises for us? A recognition, knowing that every character in every story is an aspect of ourself. So the old dervish represents our own hidden teacher, guide, our genie. It has power even when it's confined. What is this recognition and realization that Mallick Dinar had from his experiences on the road of life with this representation of his hidden teacher that answers the question for us, what is this third factor that has to be present for us to know that we know and know that we have the proper authority? The test, the right time, and
the heart to tell you.
Can we give that a word? Can you find a word in you that describes what this story has implied?
You have to be present in the moment and realize and not look for something somewhere else in the future.
Absolutely so. Absolutely so. Have we a word for that?
Yeah, heart, mind.
Yes. Connection, yes.
Is it not just awareness all the time? Or?
Uh-huh. Is it possible that if we find this word and put this little trilogy together, we have what is needed for us to recognize indeed that we do know that we know, and know that we have